Do you guys remember the bite of 17 when Fortnite Battle Royale came out and everyone and their great grandmother's pet turtle wanted to be a Battle Royale? Well, we're kind of in a similar thing now, and it's pretty interesting because this is almost literally like history kind of repeating itself here. Maybe not necessarily the integrity or background of the companies, but what's happening with the popular games and how it's shifting the meta of the industry. Let me explain. So Fortnite was originally not even a battle royale. When I first was exposed to the game, it was Save the World. So it was this PvE focused zombie shooter, and it was like a survival craft kind of thing. You had to put together a base and you went on these different missions to get resources, to craft stuff, to get better resources and things like that. But then eventually they went on and pivoted to a battle royale game mode. There were two separate things, and the battle royale blew up so much that they started devoting way more resources into that, and Fortnite turns into the superstar that we know today. Embark Studios, they originally had a game that was PvE only. It was a horde shooter. It was supposed to be something akin to like Helldivers or maybe even Destiny, and it wasn't even an extraction shooter either. It didn't have extraction elements or anything like that, until eventually they pivot away and they say, okay, this thing has to change. You want it to be PvP, etc., etc. A little bit different because Arc Raiders is one game. You get that experience just by playing the extraction. You fast forward to fall 2025, Embark Studios drops the critically acclaimed, highly anticipated Arc Raiders. The game blows up, and now look what's happening. What the fuck is this? I got recommended a thread from the Arc Raiders jerk sub that was saying Disney was apparently making an extraction shooter, and I thought somebody F12 the Dexerto tweet because I was like, yeah, there's no way that this thing is even real. I went ahead and looked it up myself, and lo and behold, Disney is making an extraction shooter. But the interesting thing is that they said they wanted to be more aligned with Arc Raiders, and we know Arc Raiders to be a more social hangout buddy kind of game than a shooter. So maybe we're just going to get VR chat with guns too with Disney characters in it. I don't know. I honestly thought it was as crazy as it could get, and it still probably is, but that report came before this next one that we're about to discuss here, and that 343 has reworked what was supposed to be the Halo Infinite Battle Royale into an extraction shooter. So I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. The foresight of AAA publishers is that of a bat, but they're also tone deaf, so that's not very good either. We are quickly approaching a point. In fact, I would say that we're already at that point because there's extraction shooters out there that people don't even talk about. Of course, Hunt, Tarkov, and Arc Raiders are the top three. But outside of that, you have what some would consider the free-to-play Tarkov, which is Arena Breakout, and then you have Marauders, and then you have Dark and Darker. There's other extraction-type games like Helldivers, Deep Rock. You got Incursion, you got Gray Zone, you got Delta Force. I mean, you could really just kind of go on and on if you wanted to. And I think for some executive-driven reason or another, these AAA publishers don't understand that not everyone has the time or even the interest to devote an equal amount of money and or attention to every game that comes out. And this is starting to hurt legacy games too, because the folks that grew up playing a lot of these legacy games are older now. They have families, they have obligations, other things that they're doing. They might not even really be playing video games anymore. And a lot of them have kind of just lost their way, with an exception of maybe Capcom, FromSoft, and Battlefield has just recently returned to their roots. And I guess you can count Rockstar in there too, but they release a game once a generation, so they're off on a different echelon of their own. But outside of a handful of AAA publishers, you're looking at the same few things over and over again. Everyone wants to make extraction shooters. Everyone wants to make battle royales. Everyone wants to make roguelikes. Everyone wants to make looter shooter, co-op PvE games. And we're kind of starting to see an eerily similar pattern emerging, right? You got your top three BRs: Fortnite, Warzone, Apex. Outside of that, you pick folks off the street, Twitter, YouTube comments, Twitch chats, Reddit threads, can't tell you a damn thing. As far as they're concerned, those are the only three that exist. Look where we're at. We got the same thing going on here. Arc Raiders, Tarkov, Hunt Showdown. Outside of that, folks can't tell you a damn thing. But now you got Disney making it, I don't even know what that's gonna look like. I can't wait to see what they do with that, but it just sounds, I don't know, that's gonna be interesting. Then you got Halo. So this is a series that I guess people have kind of just learned to grow away from over time, with some entries that people really didn't like, especially Halo Infinite. And now chasing an emerging genre with extraction shooters is likely just going to sour that taste even more. Although it says in the report that they decided to take this pivot in 2022. So this pivot happened 3 years before the launch of Arc Raiders, but even still, and this kind of goes to show, a lot of the extraction shooters that they're making now are just going to be totally irrelevant in the future, because if the next Halo project that this extraction mode is going to be a part of, or maybe it's going to be a standalone game, is coming out within the next 2 to 3 years, by that time, folks are already burnt out of this genre, or they just have the games that they're playing, which they're perfectly comfortable with and don't want anything else. And this is not like BRs either, because you can just kind of pick up a BR and figure it out as you go. An extraction shooter, you need to learn routes, attachments, gun metas, ammo metas. You need to know which traders you need to be buying and bartering from to get X, Y, and Z. You need to know what X, Y, and Z is and why you're buying and bartering that stuff. You have questing, you potentially have workbenches. Then you have the whole foundation of the game, which is early, mid, and late wipe, unless they're opting to do optional wipes, which is a whole separate issue in itself, in which if you take time away from one game and you decide to go play another one, the game that you're temporarily departing from is going to have folks get way ahead of you, depending on how comfortable they are with the game's systems and everything. But by the time you come back, it is basically unplayable. So I guess what I'm having trouble understanding is how these companies think that this, of course it is something that people are playing. Arc Raiders is a game that tricks you into thinking that you're playing an extraction shooter. It is not exactly the genre that people want. It's sort of the experience. The experience more specifically that Arc Raiders provides. They don't want Tarkov, they don't want Marathon, they don't want ABI, Hunt, Darker, they don't want any of that. But again, if that is what they're trying to capitalize on, you know, there's only one VR chat. We haven't seen a whole bunch of social world-based interaction clones. There's Rec Room and VR Chat, and I can't really think of any outside of that. So if that's what everyone's after, then why don't we just make more of those? You see, the important thing to understand is why things are getting the traction and hype that they're getting. You got to get to the root of what this stuff is about, because otherwise this AAA shit ends up happening, where we're just going to make extraction shooters for the sake of making them. We're just going to spend upwards of $100 million in 3 to 6 years making a game that by the time it comes out is already outdated. I am genuinely curious about the market research teams at these AAA publishers, because who is getting into these people's ears and saying that we have to chase the trend? It begs the question, because if you just look at gaming media, not even gaming media, just track how games that are trying to reinvent the wheel or chase trends are doing. A lot of times are not doing very well. This has been documented. This is not guesswork. These aren't theories. We're not saying that extraction shooters may or may not land with, you know, a new demographic, which is something to talk about. Are they going to land? I don't know. But if we're going to entertain that discussion, then it deserves to be asked. Like, why are we doing this? And on top of having that discussion and asking those questions, then we also need to look at, how did some of these previous games do? What's happened historically when studios try to chase the trends of things that are quickly going to become oversaturated? It's funny because this article with the Halo extraction shooter mentions it itself, talking about the BR. We take a look here. It says, claims that Halo Studios may have pivoted from a battle royale to an extraction shooter were outlined in the latest video from Rebs Gaming, a typically reliable source when it comes to inside information regarding the Halo games. Rebs further suggests that the Battle Royale mode rumored to be coming to Infinite was indeed real, building on the pretty concrete evidence shared by former Halo game director Mike Klopper. But then if you take a look right under that, it says the reason they shifted from the Battle Royale is because they couldn't make the mode feel quite right to play, and the space was becoming oversaturated. Isn't that some shit? The developers had come to an agreement that, hey, this thing we're making is probably just not going to land. Poetically, the same thing that Embark Studios had to do before they turned the PvE game into the extraction shooter. But now we've been working on this extraction shooter for 4 years now, according to the report. So I guess we need to have another talk or something. Unfortunately, there's just not going to be enough room for all of them. There's just not. As the extraction genre stands now, they're basically just going to be fighting for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th place spots.
Because what's going to happen is, okay, let's say the Halo and Disney games both come out. They're either going to do well individually or both games are going to perform quite nicely, right? These companies are not going to see that as a measure of brand awareness and timing. Instead, they're going to see it as a measure of uptrend. But the problem is the genre is quickly going to start losing steam, or at the very least appreciating in value, because there's just not enough players occupying these spaces. Arc Raiders stands alone as the game with as much star power as it has in the extraction genre, which is different than battle royales. Fortnite, Apex, and Warzone all have sizable player bases. It goes to show that through the growth of Arc Raiders and not the subsequent growth of games like Tarkov, and especially how the internet feels about Marathon for whatever fucking reason they feel that way, that Arc Raiders is more of what people want. They want social games. They don't really want shooters. Not exactly like what we're seeing happening in the fighting game community over the past 4 to 5 years, where people might go from Guilty Gear Strive to Street Fighter 6, or if they start with Street Fighter 6, they might try out Strive, or they might try out Tekken 8 or something along those lines. Because of the kind of commitment and attention that you already need to play a fighting game, then they'll let that curiosity take them elsewhere sometimes. So they'll just discover something new, which might end up being another character or just an entirely new game. But we can't necessarily draw a parallel there, because the Arc Raiders community has already explicitly expressed that they don't really want an extraction shooter. A lot of people that play this game don't interact with players in any combative capacity. Even more of those players, or maybe even less, I'm not sure, want the game to be PvE only. It's probably greater than a 0% chance, but it can't be that much higher than a single-digit chance that all these extraction shooters are getting ready to come out and there's just going to be enough people to occupy them. That's just my take on it. I could be wrong. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe with the bell so you never miss another one. If you want to chat it up, check out my Twitch and Discord, both links in the description below. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I am interested to read them. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.